Hello and welcome to another Inkarnate live stream. My name is Mati. Hey, today we're going to be doing part 2 of our How to Create Fantasy World Biomes series. So basically we're going to be covering how to blend your biomes, how to add cliffs, where to add them, get a little bit of dimension, a little more depth to your map, and we'll make a couple biomes as well. So welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome. Glad that you are here. Now before I get started, jump right into part 2 here. Let's just go up to see what's new. That's a little bell in the top right hand corner there. Click that and you'll notice there's been a recent update. We've kind of just added a new design to our catalogs with a whole bunch of nice features. It's so much more easier to navigate and to find what you're looking for. So make sure that you go and check out that update so you can see everything that's in there. I recommend that you look it over. It's easy to get familiar with the old way that we put the catalog together and the way it was and everything. So get yourself familiar with the new way and notice how easy it is as well. So check out all the new options that we have. It's going to be really, really helpful, and it's be so much easier for you to find what you're looking for and to navigate through the catalog. All right, let's get started. You're going to want to clone and edit a certain map. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat, please, if you would, Cheryl. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Everyone, just go ahead and open up that map, and we'll go ahead and take a look. Looking forward to today's stream. I really enjoy doing biome blending. It can be confusing at first, but I'll show you some real easy tricks to make blending of your biome so much easier. And cliffs are just a fantastic way to really, really add depth and some elevation. Otherwise, your maps can look a little flat without some cliffs to give it this sense of elevation. I'm going to go ahead and delete the stream title, and we're going to do a real quick recap of what happened in part 1. In part 1, we talked about first applying a grid. Set the dimensions that you want. The grid is going to be very helpful for you to set the scale and for you to create some annotation on the map for you to find, let's say, like the equator, where the tropic, subtropic, the Arctic and Antarctic. That's important. So scale. So you'll notice that I went ahead and created a scale. I'm doing 750 square miles per square. So that will give you a nice feeling of how far biomes are from each other, distances between locations, between the continents, stuff like that. So always adding a scale is very, very helpful. Then you're going to have your lines and your labels, of course. So your lines and labels are going to be things like your poles, the equator, and if you want, you can add in where your tropic and subtropics are. It depends how much detail that you want to add. Adding these things, adding these annotations on the map will make it easier for you to also decide where your biomes are. We're just assuming that we're using something similar to Earth physics here. So with the equator, you'll notice that we have some desert here. I'll zoom in. Right here, there's a desert. And so having the equator kind of helps you understand where the tropics, subtropics, and where everything is, and then where deserts might be, where your tundra and a taiga, a deciduous forest. So these annotations are helpful for you to decide where the biomes will be. So annotation is very important. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the lines and labels. I'm not going to need them quite yet, so I'll just turn them off. All right, oops. Go in here. Hey, what up? Awesome. New people. People are here. I love it. And hey, first-time chatter. Hey, 2 first-time chatters. Welcome, everybody. Awesome. So glad to see you. Now, of course, on top of doing your annotations, we also want to label where your mountains are, or at least annotate where you're going to put your mountains. So what I use is I just use the path tool to kind of create wherever I'm going to be putting my mountain ranges. Path tool works great for annotating because you can delete it, move it, rotate it. It's editable because it's live, right? So unlike if you painted a line, painted the annotation, it might only work on the FG and BG layer. So using the paths is a great way to use annotation. It's doing great, by the way, White. Thank you so much for asking. So labeling your mountains, and it's important to also annotate where your mountains are because that can determine where your biomes will be. You notice this is a coastal right here. You've got a coastal desert right here. And this coastal desert, and it's a coastal desert because it's along the coastline, obviously, and there's a mountain range to the left or the west, if you will. And it normally with a coastal, like a coastal desert, whatever ocean that it's lining, that usually that ocean is a lot colder than it is on the other ocean. So it's usually a cold ocean that's going to be along the coast of a coastal desert. Go ahead and get rid of that. So, and annotating where your mountains are, notice there's a mountain range on the left or the west. Okay, and so this kind of helps to make that a coastal desert. If you didn't have a mountain range on that west side there, guess what? You probably wouldn't have a desert there because it's got nothing obstructing the winds from blowing, and then it just kind of wouldn't be a desert, right? So having one range and then having one side be the coast, where it's nice and cool, nice cold ocean, that's generally where your coastal deserts are going to be. So I'm not going to keep this annotation, I'll just get rid of it, but it's good to have. And the last thing that we had when we did our in part 1 was we talked about annotating where your biomes are going to be. Obviously you can paint what your biomes are, but I like to do a little bit of both. I like to use the path tool to annotate where my biomes are. Notice this key in the top left-hand corner here. This key helps me to understand where each biome is, what it is, and so that way I can kind of proceed with, hey, I know where this is and I know what to do. All right, so that helps with that. Also, the one thing that I also recommend is that you also put down a base texture. Once you've put down the paths, you can put a base texture on the FG layer. That's what this is, the FG layer. That's what you're seeing where the land masses are and where the biomes are. That's the FG layer. That's anything made with the add mode of the mask tool. You're going to definitely want to paint in a base texture, and I made it correlate with the path key that I did as well. And the reason why you have that, why you want to have a base texture below your biome, is because you don't want to have to paint it multiple times to get it what you want. If you have a base texture below that kind of suits the overall color of the biome, then that way you have a base texture underneath that you can work with. So it's always nice to have a base texture. This is going to be important when you're doing your biome blending. All right, I'm going to turn off the biome. That's not important, at least not right now, because we're not going to make a biome. I'm going to go ahead and touch base on biome blending, because some people have asked, and some users have asked, how do I blend two biomes together, right? How is it that I make, let's say, this taiga or this tundra right here? How do I make these two biomes match together? How would I make this biome and this biome match? Or how would I make this biome and this biome blend? How is it that I would do that? I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this annotation. I'm not going to need it. So when it comes to snow, it's one of the best and the easiest ones to blend with whatever biome is below your tundra or Arctic. One of the best textures to use is going to be a snow texture, and it's going to be an alpha. So you notice I have this snow alpha texture right here. You just type in snow into the search field in the catalog, and then just look for the snow alpha texture. Alpha just means it supports transparency, so it's going to pick up whatever texture is below it plus the snow itself. So this texture is very, very helpful for blending whatever biome you have connected to a tundra or the Arctic. This is the best way to go. I'm going to go with 63% opacity, and then make sure it's set to the FG layer because that's where my land is. And I'm just going to apply it right on top like this. And what it does is it's just creating kind of this, a little bit of snow drifts, a little bit of snow, and it's an easy blend, right? See how easy that is? All I had to really do was just one stroke, and it kind of created the snow drifts, and then it blended into the base layer of the biome below it. So right here really is where the biome ends, or where the biomes connect. That's where you're going to put that alpha texture. And that way it's just a quick transition, an easy transition between that bottom biome, this biome, over to this biome. So alpha textures are a great way to blend biomes, and they're useful in other scenarios as well. You can change the HSBC of snow to make it black if you want to match in with some darker texture. That way it matches better. So it's a really useful. Play around. If you have Pro, HSBC is a godsend. Use it. It will be very helpful to you. So that's the easiest biome to blend, or biomes to blend, is a snow one. You just use that alpha texture. Super easy. But what happens if it's not as easy as, let's say, maybe a desert and then whatever this biome is? I'm assuming this is a savanna. So this desert right here to this savanna. How is it that I would go about blending that to where it doesn't look like this complete straight line? Looks weird, right? So how do I blend that? The objective is to diffuse the difference between that line right here. The objective is to create a diffusing effect. And the way to do that is to use just single dots of either texture. This desert texture right here, which is that yellowish texture, and this orange texture. And you're going to just do little dots. And the way I'll show you how I do that. So pick that orange texture, we'll leave the opacity at 63, and just bring it down a little bit and just do single click. So just tap or click with your mouse like this, and just do it about several dozen times until you start getting this kind of diffused effect. This is just phase one. We'll even do it along some of this up here too, so you can see some of the transition. Little dots. Again, you're diffusing that line. Let's go put it up here as well. If you have a pen, use a pen. If you have a mouse, just click with your mouse. Either one works just fine. That's phase one. You've used that first texture. Now you want to take the second biome texture, that desert, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go right in and just start doing single clicks. And those single clicks are going to cause some diffusion, causing it to kind of diffuse that line a little bit. And you can even create sections if you want. You could go in and create a little section right here. Just create a little area like this. Now, when you create a little area like that, make sure that you also diffuse the lines along there as well. Right? And now you're kind of creating like little sections. It looks kind of nice, right? You can just go in here and do some single clicks. And then you're going through this process of single clicks, and you're going through. And this is just like diffusing that line. Now, if we zoom out real quick, you'll notice that it kind of blends a little bit more. And now how much blending is up to you. If you want to do a lot to really, really get the blending, you can do that. Or you can just do a little bit and then use a filter. And I'll show you how to use filters in another stream, and how to use filters to cause biomes to blend as well. You can use textures to use the artifacts in them. Really nice. All right, so that is basically it. It's as simple as that, right? So now that you understand the basic idea of blending, you can now go in and just use the green on top of the savanna here. We already did a little bit here. And of course, we did the desert all along here. So just use whatever the two textures are, right? This green texture and this orange texture, single dots, and then diffuse the line that is in between the two biomes. Pretty easy, pretty basic. Can be time consuming depending on how much blending you're going to be doing, how big your map is. This didn't take very long. That single click only took about 5 minutes, so it doesn't really take too long, but it just depends if you have a mouse or a pen. It's going to go a lot faster with a pen, slightly slower with a mouse. All right, now that you know a little bit about blending biomes, let's go ahead and make a couple. I think the first biome we're going to make is a savanna. That's that orange right here. So I'll go ahead and turn this on and show you how a savanna operates. I'm going to go ahead and bump in here, zoom out, sorry about that. So a savanna is a grassy plain in a tropical and subtropical region with very few trees. Not a whole lot of trees, just a little bit. So if you notice carefully, I've go ahead and highlighted this tropics, subtropics. So right here, you're going to notice that the tropics and subtropics are close to the equator line. That's the equator right here. Right? This is what's beautiful about using the grid and using your annotation, because now you know where the equator is. You're going to know where your tropics and subtropics are. So your tropics are right here. This whole belt right here is going to be your tropics, while that middle line is your equator. And you'll notice that here is my savanna right here in my subtropic. Here's another savanna right here in the subtropic. So very, very useful. So now you know where that savanna is. It goes right in there. So very, very helpful to, again, to do the annotations with where the equator is and all that. Have all that information on your map so that it's so much easier for you to figure out where to put your biomes. A little bit of annotation at the start can go a long way on your map. So we'll go ahead and do a savanna. And one of the great things about a savanna is it's easy to do because a savanna is mostly flat. There's not going to be a lot of hills or mountains. It's going to be pretty flat. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. There can be some elevations, but it's fairly flat. There's not huge, dense forests. And it's just little clusters of trees kind of spackled all over the region. So it's kind of an easy biome to make. It's not complex. So we'll go ahead and zoom in. We'll go to our savanna. We'll just use this large one right here. We'll stick on the same continent where our other biomes are. Remember, it's that orange right here. And so with savanna, what we'll do is we will put down some cliffs. Actually, let's go ahead and talk about cliffs. Cliffs are extremely helpful. I'm going to go ahead and apply the cliffs to the next couple biomes here. Let's just type in cliff into it here. And there's a couple new cliffs. Both of them have been redone, or one of them has been redone. That's this one. And then this rocky cliffs has a clipping mask. And that one's really, really nice. I'm not going to be using that in this stream, but they are extremely helpful because they pick up whatever texture is on the FG layer. So notice that when I put this cliff over the savanna, it picks up that orange texture. If I put it over the desert here, it picks up that texture. If I put it here, it picks up that texture. So this is a really, 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 really helpful. And it's so much easier to actually work with these because that clipping mask kind of fills in for you a little bit in the back of it. So that's really, really helpful. But I'm not going to be using those ones. I'm actually going to be using a different one because I actually like the shapes and they work really well for what we're going to be doing in the stream. So I'm going to be using these cliffs right here. And, you know, even though these don't have a clipping mask, there is a trick that you can use to have them pick up whatever texture is below them. You can just go click luminosity and it will pick up the texture below it. I always like to place one down first and then go into HSBC and change the overall brightness, whether it take it up or down, depending. If it's a really bright texture, you'll have to boost the brightness because look how dark it is. So I boost that brightness, and if you want it to blend even more, you can drop the contrast down and you'll lose some of the line work, and it will blend in better with the texture below it. So that's helpful to do that technique. I think I'll bring the contrast up just a little bit more, and we'll stick with about there. And then we're going to go ahead and start with the first trick with cliffs, which is really, really helpful, which is that you can put them at the base of your mountains by lining up the line work. So if I go in like this and I put the line work at the top of this cliff at the bottom of the line work here, you can kind of create this illusion that the line work is connected. We can make this even smaller if you want. And just place one at the top. The way that I put down cliffs on mountain ranges or just on any biome is I start at the top of the biome and then I go down. And I usually start with my mountains first because technically where those cliffs are kind of makes sense because it's a higher up elevation in the mountains, and then the cliffs will either get smaller as they go further away from the mountains, and so that you're kind of creating this effect of the tall cliffs are closer to the mountains with the higher elevation and then drops it down. So let's go ahead now and place a couple more cliffs. And the way that I like to do this is, again, just doing the line work. So I'm lining up this one right here to go on the line work here. Let's go ahead and put another one right here. And then let's put, let's go ahead and use this one again right here. I like this one. Let's actually put it right here instead. I just don't want it to accidentally not be in the right spot. So I'll go ahead and put that there. Okay, so now we have some cliffs right here. So now you have some nice cliffs, and you can add a lot more too. We can change the size of the cliffs to give it more dimension and depth. And you can even flip around and make like a crevice or make a ravine or a canyon. Just put another one facing this way, and then you have this nice kind of canyon right here if you want. So you can put cliffs together to create some really intriguing and interesting kind of land masses. So I'm going on this side, but technically I'll put the mountains on this side because we're going to be doing a savanna. But I just want you to see really well. You can see what cliffs do for your map when you apply them. Is it time consuming to put them down? Sure, absolutely. But it is a huge difference when you use them because they really look nice and give it a sense of depth. So now I'm going to go, and the further I go away now, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more cliffs, but I'm going to make them even smaller. So I kind of bring the size down. And again, the further I get away from the mountain range, the smaller and smaller the cliffs are going to get. So I'll go ahead and put down another one. Let's put down, I kind of like this shape right here. Let's put another one up against here. Let's bring the size down even smaller. Actually, we can bring it back up one. That's fine. Around that size is fine. And now when you put them up against the coastline, I like to put them, to give it this effect of extra depth, I like to put them just right up against where the mask effects are. So one right there, and I can even put another one like right here. And it kind of creates this illusion of shelves kind of going down to the coastline. So steps, if you will, like a step. So you can create some really, really interesting landscape. Make sure that you add the cliffs after you add your mountains. Don't put the biome, trees, and vegetation down first because it'd be really hard to put down cliffs underneath all these trees. Put down your cliffs first in your biome, and then you can put down all your trees and stuff like that. So cliffs come after mountains when you're working on your biomes. Some other really nice things you can do is kind of create this kind of plateau rocks. I've shown this in other streams before, but it's a technique. It's kind of iconic to myself because I use it in almost every single map. But I kind of create this little plateau rock like this, and it kind of looks like it's a little, I guess, a plateau or some kind of rock face. And I'll just go ahead and group it like this. And I like to place it somewhere, like right up against here looks nice. It kind of fits there okay. Copy, paste, and then you can go in and select everything in the group and then flip it so you have like a different variation of it. Oopsie, I accidentally put them inside of the group. My mistake. Go ahead and delete that. And I'll group that. And you can, of course, change the size to make it smaller. So you can put like another one, like right over here, or over here if you wanted to. And so you're creating really more interesting landscape. See how different that is in comparison to an area where there is no cliffs. See, there's no cliffs in this biome right here, so it seems really, really flat. To avoid that, add these cliffs. And remember the tricks. You can change the blend mode. You can drop the saturation to make them completely gray with your gray mountains, or use the luminosity blend mode and change the contrast and brightness to kind of make them match better. Because you will have to finagle a little bit with HSBC with luminosity, because the brighter the base texture of your biome is, the more you'll have to bump up the brightness to match with the cliff. So you'll see cliffs are extremely helpful. So now let's go ahead and add cliffs to our savanna. And what's kind of interesting is that you're doing the back side of the mountains, and so you'll see less of the cliffs because they'll be covered. That's why I did the front here, and I didn't do the savanna part, but we will. So let's go ahead and throw down a cliff. I'm going to apply it real quick first to the map because, again, you have to change the brightness as you go. So let me change the brightness here. You see when I had the original setting that I used for the cliffs in the desert, you notice that it kind of disappears. But by bringing the brightness down, you kind of make it match better. So it's really important, again, to just pay real close attention to your brightness when you're using the luminosity blend mode. So let's go ahead and now take this, and I'll go ahead and put this behind. So this is going to have to be a layer beneath. So you'll notice here it's beneath it. Perfect. And again, you're just lining up the line work. See, I've added that cliff right there. Lines up against the line work there. I can do the same thing with another one. Let's go ahead and apply this one right here. Make it nice and big. It can even go into the mountains. That's fine. And we'll put it right there. So there's some cliffs there. Let's go ahead and throw in another cliff. Let's see here. If you're going to throw in the cliffs, let's also throw in maybe a ravine or a crevice, because that would look nice here. And we're just going to put elevation on the outskirts of the savanna and not in the central part of it. Okay, just on the outskirts where the mountains are. So we'll put some cliffs along here, and then the savanna and in the interior of the savanna. The interior is just going to be where the central parts are. The central part of the savanna will have no cliffs whatsoever. We'll just have a little bit of tufts of grass and probably some bush willow trees, I think they're called, because we just added some brand new trees and they are awesome. So definitely check them out. Let's go ahead and throw in a couple more cliffs here. Let's bring the size down, and then we'll throw down a couple more cliffs. Let's see here. I really like these ones right here. This one right here, This one right here is one of my favorites. I really like its shape. And this one right here are also really, really good ones. These two right here are probably the best cliffs in my opinion, because they just work so well up against the mountains, and they also have a little bit of character to them. So really, really helpful to use these cliffs. Let's put one there, and then let's flip this one and put another canyon in here like this. And then we will call that section good, I think. And you could do a lot of things with this. You could say that there's a river that goes through here. That's the beauty of adding the elevation. Like, what carved out that canyon, right? That's the beauty. Once you put down the canyon, once you've put down the cliffs, you can also say, oh, hey, a river goes through here, or a road can go through that canyon, right? So by adding more and more landscape, these cliffs, you can start deciding what you want to be there. Like, this could easily be a river. It could be a road that leads up into the mountains. It could be a pass, right? So cliffs are an absolute must. Very, 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 very helpful. All right, let's go ahead and add in a couple more cliffs on this other side right here, and then maybe we can put some over here just to kind of break it up. Let's go ahead and throw down our cliffs. Let's go ahead and put, let's do the back side of cliffs, because I know that one doesn't really get shown a lot. So the back side of cliffs is just the line work. So if I just throw a line right here, and that's going to be the back side of the cliff. Obviously you can't see its face. That's just the way perspective works. If you could see it, that would be really weird. All right, let's throw down a cliff here. I want to be able to see some face so I can at least see it. And let's go ahead and throw down, let's go with this one right here, maybe. No, let's go ahead and throw down another one. Let's kind of extend it a little bit further. Let's take a look. This one right here works just fine. Perfect. And then we can wrap it around and put a face to it so you can see it. Let's put one right here. That looks good. And then let's put another one over on this side. Maybe look like there's a pass that kind of goes into the desert here. So I can go and put one right there. And then I can kind of create this space that looks like you go through into the desert that way. And I can even throw in a little island there. Whenever I make my biomes, I always like to have, especially with desert, and I mentioned this, I like to have a last settlement that you can go to before you go into the desert. And so these kind of little islands right here work kind of nice. Here we can put one right here, and I'll just bring the size down. And of course you could put like a settlement or something right there, an icon or whatever stamp you like to use. That could be like your final settlement before you go into the desert and reach this oasis right here. So you had a road goes into this canyon right here. Here's a pit stop. You get to rest with your players, buy the proper equipment, prepare you're going into a desert, you're going to want to prepare because you really don't want to be unprepared when you're going into a desert. And then, of course, you're all prepped, and then you can kind of go to the oasis and then what other locations that you have in that biome. So yeah, what do you guys think? Cliffs, yeah, good stuff. Time consuming, but good stuff because they are extremely helpful, right? Yes, they are so incredibly helpful. All right. Yeah, I mean, look at that. See how much the cliffs do? I mean, it just looks, just look how flat look how flat this region looks in comparison to down here. Wow, just a world of difference when you put down those cliffs. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Awesome. Good stuff. All right, yeah, let's go throw down the last bit of cliffs. And I'll probably just, what's really nice is you can steal entire sections of cliff that you put together, copy, paste, and just boom, place them down in here somewhere, right? There you go. And also, one other thing I can mention about cliffs is that what's really nice is that you can line them up with whatever line of the top texture of the top one, and you can kind of make it look like I'm connecting the top of the line work of this cliff to that cliff stamp above it to make it look like I'm adding another sense of depth, another set of cliffs, so steps. So the trick is just continuity with the line work of the cliffs so that way it has this really, really nice look to it. And you can do this all over your map. The other thing I want to mention is, again, remember how I hugged those cliffs up against the shoreline? Let me put it in again real quickly so I can kind of show it to you. You can really see what it looks like. Because you can really create this interesting illusion of cliff height when you do this. So let me go ahead and just change the brightness on this. This has to be much darker. There we go. Notice that? You can line it up to where it looks like I've created a little butte, or a little, not a butte, I'm sorry, kind of a little cliff right here. You see how I've connected the line work of the cliff against, right up against the shore to kind of create this cliff effect. So really, really helpful to use cliffs. Okay, I don't think I need to do a whole lot more. I mean, you could add as many cliffs as you want. We're 30 minutes in, so I want to make sure to get to the next biome. So let's go ahead and throw in our trees, right? And I think there should be, I think they're called bush willow. Let me check. We have a whole bunch of new trees, so definitely check them out. 1 second, let me get to them. Let me just type in tree into the catalog. So much easier than scrolling through all of it. You'll notice all the trees here. This tree right here will work just fine, a bush willow tree. These are going to work just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go check out, excuse me, the scale of the trees we already have, because you want to keep a continuity of the tree sizes. So I don't want to make massive trees unless of course you're having, these trees are massive, like a world tree, and we'll probably throw a world tree into our deciduous forest. So let's just bring this down one more. Let's bring it down to, let's bring it to 30. That's about the right size. And what you'll do is just create just a couple clusters first. Remember, it's a savanna. There's not going to be a dense wood of these bush willow trees. You're only going to have just a little bit of just some little area. So what we'll do is just, I like to do what I just call the rule of 3. I just click to make 3 little, shall we say, islands of trees. All right, whatever you want to call it. And I'll just kind of put them, I don't want to make them too equidistant from each other, so break it up. You notice how all of these look kind of almost equidistant from each other? Not exactly, but close. Avoid that. Nature does not do that, at least not what our eyes can see. Nature has a lot of randomness to it, and there's not a lot of symmetry, at least not on what we can see. On the molecular level, might be something different. So we throw in just these clusters, like I said, a rule of 3. Just throw in 3. I'm not going to put any on the cliffs. Instead, what I'm going to do is just kind of place them away from the cliffs, because I want to have it on the flatter area. So I'll just put down 3, 3, 3, 3. right. Once you've done those threes, then you can go on to part 2. Just throw in single randos and have them be within the same, gravitational pull as the clusters. So throw a couple randos, and what that does is it makes the rule of 3, those 3 clusters, it doesn't make it look like it's just 3 trees. It looks like they're kind of scattered about. So this is a way of kind of throwing out some somewhat realistic vegetation. And then I'll show you how to blend your stamps in with your biome as well. Because what happens if you want to throw a little bit of green grass underneath those trees? You totally can. Let's just throw in some randos that are away from the cloud of trees. Just a couple single randos. There you go. Now you got your single randos. Easy, right? That's it. Now let's say that I want to blend these trees with the biome below it. This is easy. Just select one of the trees, click the hamburger menu, select all from this set. All the trees have been selected. Perfect. Now you're going to go to Shadow. You're going to go to Object. It's going to take a moment for it to load. So we'll let the object shadow pop up. Just give it a moment. And I'm going to change it to, perhaps a green color. Give it a moment to load. Perfect. Let's use a darker green. Light green does not work. Let's go with an even darker green. I think let's increase the intensity just a little bit. I think that works. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice you have some green patches now underneath your trees, giving it a little bit of giving it a feel of like there's some grass growing underneath these trees, right? Causing them to blend better, which I really, really like. Okay, and the last thing you might want to consider doing is adding a little bit more texturing for grass. And I'm just going to click the Inkarnate tag up here. What that's going to do when I click that in this new catalog is it's actually going to open up every single texture that's available to me in all the styles. Then I'm going to type in grass like this. And in the parchment style, there is a nice grass alpha texture that works just great. And we're going to pick that grass. And I'm going to bring the opacity all the way up. And I'm going to do one swipe on the ground first just to see what it looks like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the open or negative spaces. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, your negative space is just wherever there's not stamps. See, that's negative space. Anything that is not stamps is negative space, and you're going to use that negative space and put a texture on there. So let's go ahead and just place this texture down. Even if the grass seems kind of big, that's fine. And just put it in the areas that have that negative space. And it's some additional grass. And because it's an alpha, it'll keep whatever texture is below it. And that is just fantastic, because maybe you don't want to have just the grass on whatever weird color. So you can pick the base texture, and then you can also throw down this alpha grass texture. And it works just fine. You don't have to use it in parchment. It's perfectly usable in your world maps as well. It's a very good texture. I definitely recommend using it. And it's so much easier than, say, taking a tuft of grass stamp and then just randomly clicking them everywhere, because that would be a lot. So do less work for yourself and instead use a grass alpha texture. See, look at that. Alpha textures work fantastic. Just like you use that snow alpha texture up here to do the blending, you use the same kind of alpha textures to kind of create some nice texturing in that savanna. Looks good. I'm at 506 changes. I'm probably going to save it real quick, and then we'll move on to the last biome. And that's going to be our deciduous forest. So I'll quickly save. This is a lot. Just a little slow. Deciduous forests are fun. Oopsie. Causing a little bit of lag here. There we go. Just takes us just a quick moment. I'll probably refresh the page. That always helps whenever you feel there's a little bit of lag or things are just getting kind of wonky. Remember, it's an online tool, so make sure that you save and refresh the page. This generally will help with a lot of issues you bump into. Any other issues that you do bump into, make sure that you go to our built-in support, and that way we can help you there. Once this is finished saving, we'll go ahead and move on to the next biome. Deciduous forests. Deciduous forests are pretty much what you guessed it. They're made up of deciduous trees. That is leafy trees that shed their leaves seasonally. So that's pretty much what a deciduous forest is. While its opposite would be like a coniferous forest, where it's made up of conifers. Think of like something with a pine cone or that has pine or has needles to it. That's generally a conifer. All right, finish saving, and we'll go on to the next one. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and zoom out, and let's talk about deciduous forests, okay? Deciduous forests, here we go. So deciduous forests is a biome dominated by deciduous trees, which lose their leaves seasonally, okay? So oak, birch, trees like that, those are deciduous trees. Their leaves, they drop their leaves. It's what we call the fall or autumn. And I've marked the brown area. Notice the arrows are pointing to where all my deciduous forest is. I'm going to go ahead and use a smaller section to do my deciduous forest because I've only got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and abstain this time from the Q&A at the end because we have a Q&A for a stream next week. So no Q&A this time. Let's go ahead and get started. So if a deciduous forest is primarily made of deciduous trees, we're going to have to pick deciduous stamps, right? So let's go into that stamp catalog. I've already got tree set up. So this tree right here, this common green tree, this one, these are all deciduous. Trees like this, the pine, that's a conifer. All of the pines are conifers, evergreens. And a sequoia tree. Right, so these are going to be deciduous, and these are going to be coniferous. So we're doing a deciduous forest, so let's stick with that. So I'll give you some advice about making a deciduous forest, and that is don't use the same tree. Blend up your tree. A deciduous forest is primarily made of deciduous trees. That doesn't mean it can't have conifers in it. You can add a whole variety of trees, and you expect that in a lot of biomes. Some biomes do have just a lot of the same type of trees that may exist, but a diversity of trees in your deciduous forest will really give it some character. Let's quickly throw in just a couple cliffs because I like cliffs and I want to throw in a couple. So let's go ahead and do some interesting things with the line work. Let's do the technique we used here, and let's make some interesting sections here. Let's go ahead and put this cliff up against here to make it kind of look like this is a little section right here. Let's go ahead and change the brightness as always. We got to change the brightness. Let's just do that. There we go. Now we have a nice little section right here, and I can put some trees on top of that as well as some rocks. Let's go ahead and put in, let's put in another one right here. It kind of fits right into that little section right there. That looks nice. And then I'll just go ahead and take the same one here. And I like it so much, I'll go ahead and put it right here to make it look like there's some cliffs here. And then let's put in one more right here. And of course, I'll kind of make it just a little bit smaller. So put one here, tinier. And I can put it right, let's put the smaller one over here actually. And let's see here. I think, no, that won't work. Let's actually flip it around. Might work better. There we go. Let's just take a look and see what this looks like if I throw this on there. Yep, that'll do just fine. Okay, so now I've added a little bit of cliffs there, of course. Cliffs are nice. And I'll throw in one more on the other side. Let's go ahead and use this one. I'm just going to copy and paste it and just line it up right against here like this. Okay, there we go. Now to throw in the trees. Remember to use the bulk of the trees you're going to be using are deciduous. Don't use a lot of coniferous trees, otherwise it becomes it'll be predominantly a coniferous forest, right? So let's go ahead and throw in the deciduous tree. I'm going to go that's pretty big, 70. Let's go down to, let's try 50. Just see what that looks like. I think that looks about right. We can bring it a little bit bigger. Let's go with 53. Okay. Let's go ahead and go over here. So when it comes to more denser forests, you can use a lot of different techniques. You can change the density and the area. So you notice that I got this density brush right here. This will fill in a lot. And the way that I do thicker forests is just a couple clicks of the area brush. And the problem, one of the things with the area brush is there is a sense of equidistance between them. So you have to do single click forests, trees around it to diffuse the kind of tree line a little bit. Otherwise it just looks like a block of trees when normally there would be some trees diffusing around, kind of around the tree line. So let's just create a certain section that's going to be most dense. And so I'll go ahead and just apply over here, make it nice and dense. And I'll just do single clicks, because one thing with the density brush, especially if you're at a higher editing resolution, is that it can lag. So single clicks kind of helps to diminish some of that lag. So make sure that you do single clicks to kind of help with that. And so I'll maybe put one over here as well, and then we can put some sections over here, and then let's put some over here as well on this side. Now that you've done that section, now you're gonna, when you look at it, it looks pretty blobular, right? Kind of like a glob. So the way to fix that is just to bring the area back down to 1 or 0, and then just single click around it. And that way it doesn't look like just a blob. So very, very helpful to just go in, make the main blob first, and then just do the single clicks around it. And that way it's kind of easily put together, right? And then from there, I like to start connecting some of them. If they're really close together, I like to connect them. So I'll connect this one with it and then bring it way out. And the reason why I'm kind of leaving some negative space is to throw in the other types of trees. So this way I have room. Now I can go in and use a different tree. And my recommendation is to use one that's pretty different. So let me just apply this and just see how different it is. You'll see it's kind of a lighter, more saturated or desaturated green. So I'll go ahead and throw that in there with some single clicks. And you're already starting to see some diversity in the trees there by throwing in that. So I'll throw in a little more trees here, a little more here, and we'll throw in a little more here. Nice. Now I can go in, back into my catalog, throw in another variation of tree. So I could go in and probably use any one of these. I could use this common green tree right here and just throw it in. And this will kind of add a darker tree color, and that will look really nice. So just throw in a couple of those. So now you have a little bit more diversity, and I really like that. And then you can also throw in some conifers as well. Just throw in them in little sections. Like we can maybe put a conifer section up at the top here along the coastline. So we can go in and grab a conifer. This one right here will work just fine. And maybe just throw in a cluster right here. Throw in a couple here. Maybe put them along the tree line, some along here, and then some along here. There we go. And then just throw in a couple randos, single randos. There we go. Now you have some nice diversity, variation in trees. Looks really nice. And then you can go over and select all the trees. What you can do, one thing I do recommend is once you've put down every single cliff, I definitely recommend that you select every single cliff. Remember that trick, just select one cliff, hamburger menu, select all in the set, group it, label it cliff, of course, cliffs, and then lock it. And this way you won't accidentally select them when you're trying to move some trees around or select a single tree or whatever. So really, really helpful. Cliffs, and then just lock it immediately. Boom. Now I won't accidentally select the cliffs, and I can select all my trees with impunity. Excellent, right? And now I can go in, and I can go ahead and go to my shadow, object shadow. Okay, and now I'm going to be very careful about this because the shadow looks really weird, and the shadow's even off the landmass a little bit. So I'll make some room so that I can kind of see it as I'm editing it. And I'll bring the shadow blur down a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to bring it down so the shadow is below it a little bit. And then I'll bring the intensity down. Let's bring it to about here. And what it's kind of doing is kind of creating this shadow effect. And it kind of makes the stamps pop out a little bit too by adding a little bit of a shadow to it. So if you look carefully, there's a nice darker underbelly beneath these trees, kind of making it feel like it's dense. It's casting a shadow in the interior of the forest. So it's the same technique what we did over here with the savanna trees, right? Only we just chose a green shadow to create the blending. With this one, we kind of just used black. You could use a really dark green if you wanted to. Just be careful not to accidentally make the shadow too big, because if the shadow was too big, then it's going to go off the landmass. Look carefully. Let me show you what that looks like when you make it too big. See what happens when I make the shadow too big? Let me bring the intensity up so you can see it. You'll notice that the shadow is going right off of the landmass. Okay, so you'll have to change the shadow blur size as well as the intensity, and I drop it down a little bit because I don't want the shadow going above the trees. I want it below it. So I'll go ahead and just Control-Alt-Z undo that. There we go. And there are my trees popping out. And you can do it with mountains too, by the way. You can use that same shadow technique. Just push the shadow with the X offset. Push it a little bit to the left or to the right, whichever side the shadow side is on. And adding a shadow to your mountains will also cause the shadows to pop out. Remember, if you want to create depth, shadow is the way to do it. Black. Using a dark shadow color is how you make things pop out. You could do the same thing with blending cliffs. If you wanted your cliffs to blend in, you could also add a shadow to your cliffs. It's amazing what you can do. You can select your cliff and then just go to add your shadow like this. Let the shadow pop up, give it a moment, and then you can change the blur a little bit, and you can kind of create a little bit of shadow work on your cliff as well. So there are all kinds of tricks that you can kind of use to make your stuff pop out more. Shadows are extremely useful. Notice the difference when I added some shadows to the cliffs, right? Just kind of added a little bit of extra to it. So it's not something that you have to do, but you can totally do it. Okay, well, I think that is it. Let's just go ahead and go to a little retrospect on what we learned today. Remember how to do your biome blending. Use alpha textures. Remember, what did we do? We used that alpha snow texture to make it easier to blend this forest area to that. This forest area right here. One moment. This forest area to this biome right here. We did the same thing. We did something different here. We caused the desert biome to blend with the savanna by doing single clicks or dots for diffusing the barrier or the line between the two biomes. Single clicks. Use the base textures, that desert texture and that orange savanna, or the texture that I used for the savanna. Okay, what else did we learn? We also covered cliffs, because remember, cliffs are a great way to create depth. Just remember the difference between a biome that has cliffs against a biome that has cliffs. You'll notice a huge difference. Elevation. So use cliffs. And remember, my recommendation to you is throw down your mountains first before you throw down anything else on your land masses. Throw down your mountains, then throw down your cliffs, lock your mountains, group all your mountains, lock them, label them mountains, group all your cliffs, label them cliffs, lock them, and in that way you have the landscape to work with. Because it's just like if you're building a house, right? You start with the foundation first. The foundation is going to be the landmass. From there, you build up, right, with your walls. So next, put down your mountains. That's going to be a tallest point, right? Then from the mountains, you'll build your cliffs. And then on top of your cliffs, you start putting your biome, your vegetation, your plants, and stuff like that. So just remember this kind of order of operation. Because the cliffs are going to be so helpful. Okay. All right. And then the last thing that we kind of did is we made a couple biomes. Remember, we made this savanna, and I showed you the trick with shadows. Remember the shadow trick? With trees or whatever vegetation, shadows of the trees are a great way to cause blending, because if you didn't use those shadows of those savanna trees or bush willow trees, you would have ended up texturing it. Why give yourself more work? Just use the shadow, okay? That's what's going to help you out, all right? So we did the savanna. Remember, we also used that alpha texture right here, this grass alpha texture from parchment. So much better than putting little bushes or using whatever grass tufts from whatever stamp you want, using that alpha texture. And remember, it's an alpha, so it's going to go on top of whatever texture you want. So if you had this green grass texture, this texture is still going to work on it. Don't recommend using the grass texture, though, with the desert, unless it's next to a oasis. That grass texture might work perfect ringing around the oasis that we have in that desert right below us, right there. Okay? And then the last thing we did is we talked about a deciduous forest, which we created up here. And of course, what did we do first? We put down all our cliffs, and then we put down our trees. And then with the trees, we used object shadows to make the trees pop out, right? Because if you don't have it, look carefully at maybe some trees that don't have any kind of shadowing on them. Notice these trees right here? They don't have an object shadow, do they? Right? And yet, they don't pop out quite the same as the trees that have the shadows. So look carefully at this over here, no object shadow, compared to this with object shadow. Big difference, right? So object shadow is your best friend. It'll work with mountains too, I guarantee it. Just experiment, play around with colors, see what happens. It is just really it's just endless possibilities that you can do with it. So definitely recommend object shadows. All right, well, we've got 2 more minutes. We're at the top of the hour, and I'm going to go ahead and call it good. We'll go ahead and continue this stream in the future with part 3. If you have any suggestions that you want in part 3, particular biomes, make sure that you go to our Discord server, sign up. If you go to the Discord, of course, make sure that you go to the roles channel and get the Inkarnate role. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see every single one of the channels. So join the Discord and go ahead and do that. And go ahead and feel free to message me. I'm Mati. Message me if you have any suggestions about the biomes in the next episode. I am all ears because I love making these videos and I love making biomes. We're going to let this save, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you the schedule for the rest of the month, and then that's it. Just taking a moment to save. We'll go to the calendar. We got a Q&A coming up next week. We have a whole new crowd, so it makes sense. I just want to mention that if you are going to leave any questions during the Q&A, please don't ask any questions concerning your account information, anything like that, because that's something that's private and you're going to want to leave that kind of information, billing information, that kind of stuff, leave that to our built-in support, okay? And please don't make requests for art or features. That's not the point of the Q&A. We have links to our site to where we take art requests and feature requests. If either Cheryl or Becca wants to throw in those feature requests and art request links, please put those in the chat. Check those out. So do not ask personal questions about your account, card information, billing, and please don't ask anything about feature or art requests. Save that for feature and art requests, okay? All right, let's go ahead and jump back and check out the calendar real quick, and I'll go ahead and show you what we're going on for the remainder of the week. So we've already done annotate your maps. We did that last week. That was a great stream, really, really helpful. If you haven't checked it out, I totally recommend it. This stream is going to be really, really helpful to helping you to figure out how to label your map. It's a really good stream. Go check it out. We have just finished Fantasy World Biomes 2. It was great. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate that. Q&A next week, 19th, 3 p.m. And then the following week, on the 26th, I'm going to show you how to create perspective battle maps. That means putting a little bit of perspective in your map, in your battle map, so you could see some of the walls. And it's really fun. It's not as complex. It is technical, but it's not as confusing and complex as you think. I'm going to be providing a method of doing it that is just real quick and easy. All right, well, that concludes the stream. Thank you so much, everyone. Please stay safe and healthy, and I will see you all next week. Avita Zane, cheerio, goodbye.